Have you ever tried to squat perfectly, but no matter how hard you work on your form, it just doesn't feel quite right? That's because your anatomy plays a huge role in how you should squat. In today's video, with the help of a few new friends, I'm going to show you how to perform the perfect squat, no matter your body type, long or short femurs. I'll break down exactly how your anatomy can alter your squat. Then, I'll give you a checklist you can use to adjust your own technique and master your squat form based on your anatomy. Now, it should come as no surprise that we all have different body proportions, and these differences can significantly impact the mechanics and ease of the squat. Individuals with longer femurs relative to the torso often find squatting more challenging, and sometimes need to lean their torso forward more to maintain balance. For example, Bailey and Tori are relatively the same height, but one has longer femurs. Notice the difference in angles created between the thigh and the torso during their squat. Now, some coaches will see this forward lean technique and yell, "chest up." However, any attempt to lift the torso for someone with long femurs will lead them to become off balance and just fall backwards. On the other hand, those with proportionally shorter femurs will tend to keep their torso more upright when squatting and find it far easier. Now you may be asking, what constitutes as a long or a short femur? Well, recent scientific evidence suggests that the average femur length to be roughly 25% of one's total height for males and females. However, not everyone falls within this textbook normal range. To test and see the length of your femurs, sit on a straight back chair with your spine fully against the back of the chair. Next, measure the distance between the back of the chair and the end of your knee. Then, plug in that distance to this simple formula and see what you find. For example, I'm 5 feet 11 inches tall, and based on calculations with this testing method, my femurs fall within the average length. This is one reason why I assume only a slightly angled torso when squatting, but some people like Tori, who have very long femurs, will have a slightly different experience. So, what's the solution? Let's go over a 5-step checklist you can use to find the best squat for your anatomy. If you have average or shorter femurs, a shoulder width stance is a good starting place for most people. However, if you have long femurs, you may benefit from a slightly wider stance and or opening your hips up to a greater degree during the descent. Doing so will essentially shorten the length of the femur when viewing the squat from the side, creating a balance adjustment throughout the rest of your body and allowing the torso to remain more upright as a side effect. Now, before we move on to the second factor, which is by far the most important of all these 5, let's talk about how far you should angle your toes out. For most people, regardless of femur length, a slight toe out angle between 10 and 20 degrees is going to be the most optimal for squatting. However, I've made videos like this one in the past that explain how this isn't right for everyone. For example, if you have a ton of hip internal rotation and very limited hip external rotation in both a seated and a laying down position, you could be dealing with hip anteversion, meaning your femur connects to your pelvis at a more inward angle than most. Those with anteversion find squatting with their toes out to be uncomfortable and find a relatively straightforward foot position to be the best and strongest alignment. On the other hand, if you have a ton of hip external rotation and very limited hip internal rotation in both a seated and laying down position, you could be dealing with hip retroversion, meaning your femur connects with your pelvis at a more backward angle than most. Those with retroversion sometimes find squatting with their toes 100% forward to be very uncomfortable and may even feel a pinch or blocked feeling in the front of their hip. However, turning their toes out to the side a bit more allows them to open their hips and squat without restrictions. Now for the second tip. The most important factor when squatting, regardless of your anatomy, is the need to stay balanced. This means trying to keep the barbell tracking relatively over the middle of your foot. As we've discussed, anatomy variations will require a different trunk angle for some. But if there's one thing you take away from this video, as long as you're in balance, both of these squats are good. Now, if you still feel really off balance and disconnected with your squat, here's a helpful drill that you can perform to help perfect this part of your lift, one that I learned from the greatest powerlifter of all time, Ed Cohn.
It's just not, okay, I'm gonna squat. You gotta know where you are every single section of the lift on the way down. The easiest way to do that is do like a 10-second rep. Just get a real light weight on the bar, and it's gonna be hard. Get in your position and go down in stages. Here, here, here. If you're forward on the way down, you'll know it because you're going each section. I'm a little forward now. You adjust here, 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 and then you can come up. If you practice that time and time again, you'll know exactly where you're supposed to be on the way down, which makes it a heck of a lot easier to come up because that's what sets your bad form on the way down. And you'll know exactly what muscles to use and how they're supposed to be used and how they're supposed to feel every single point of the movement. That goes the same for all of them. And any other assistance exercise you do too. If you know how the weight's supposed to feel, what muscles you're supposed to use, and where you're supposed to be technically or biomechanically every point of the movement, that exercise is now going to be an incredibly efficient exercise.
Tip number 3 is going to be looking at your ankle mobility. The more that your knee can go over your toes, the more upright you can be with your squat. Now there's 2 tests that I want you to perform to see if ankle mobility exercises would be helpful as a part of your squat warm-up. For the first, kneel by a wall or box and place your foot roughly 5 inches from the edge. If you don't have a ruler, a fist plus an extended thumb for most is a good rough estimate. Next, drive your knee forward in an attempt to touch your knee to the wall without your heel popping off the ground. Ensuring your knee moves straight is key for proper testing, so don't allow your hips to swivel to the side or your knee to track to the inside of your big toe. A positive test is if you had significantly limited motion and could not come close to touching the wall with your knee. The second test is for the lesser known but very important motion of tibial rotation. As you squat, your knee not only moves over your toes, but your shin bone also internally rotates and tips to the side. To screen for this, take a seat and align your feet with your toes pointed straight forward. While keeping your knees in place and your feet flat on the ground, rotate one foot in at a time as far as possible. Don't let your foot roll on its side or you'll skew the test results. If you have less than 20 degrees of motion on either side, that would indicate a positive test. Now that we've run through the tests, let's construct an individualized warm-up program for any of you that may have found restrictions. If you are limited with ankle mobility knee over toe, try a calf stretch with your foot placed on a bench or a chair. Drive your knee over your toe until you feel a stretch in the back of your leg and hold 5 reps for a 5-second hold. If, however, this brings out a pinch or block sensation in the front of your ankle joint, you may need to try a banded joint mobilization instead. Make sure to get a ton of tension on a band. The band is positioned over the top of the foot under your ankle bones. It should not be higher on your shin. This will help the band glide the talus bone of your foot backwards, effectively assisting the natural motion of the ankle to enhance mobility. If you have just enough band tension, you won't feel the pinch anymore when driving knee over toe. Try 10 reps back and forth. And last, if you found limited tibial rotation on one side, find a resistance band. If you're at home, a towel works great as well. Trap the band under the base of your big toe, then open your hips as far as you can to the side while keeping your foot firmly planted to the ground. Fail to keep the foot stable and the band or towel will snap out. If done correctly, you should feel your glute working really hard. Try 10 reps for a 5-second hold in the open position. This leads us to our next checklist factor that can help you achieve the perfect squat no matter your body type, and that's the use of a heel lift or a weightlifting shoe with a built-in heel. Now, for those of you who have normal or short femurs, or those who have excellent ankle mobility like myself, you may not need a weightlifting shoe to comfortably squat deep with an upright chest. However, if you're in the long femur group and or have really stiff ankles, elevating the heel slightly can have a dramatic effect on your technique, allowing you to squat deeper with a more upright chest. Now, for those looking to purchase a pair of weightlifting shoes, I'd highly suggest the Tier L1 lifter that I helped develop. Not only does it have a built-in elevated heel, but it is the only weightlifting shoe on the market with a wide toe box. Most lifting shoes are constructed with a very narrow toe box that smash your toes together. This hinders your foot's optimal ability to root and remain stable, weakening arch control and increasing the risk of technique breakdown like knee cave. Our wide toe box shoe allows your toes to spread out and your foot to function as optimally as possible. So after this video, head on over to tier.com and pick up your pair of the L1 weightlifting shoe. The last option to find the perfect squat for your body is to play around with the position of the load. Unless you're a powerlifter, there's no rule that you have to barbell back squat. In fact, some people with really long femurs find a front squat or even a goblet squat with the weight held in front of the body to be far more comfortable, as the body naturally maintains a more upright torso. So while the squat is a fundamental movement that everyone should be able to perform and train, not everyone is going to look the exact same performing it. and that's okay. I recommend listening to your body and using a technique variation and or a mobility-based warm-up that suits it. And if you're interested in learning how to increase your squat strength, check out this video where myself, along with Brian Carroll, who squatted 1,305 pounds, give you our top 5 tips for a bigger squat.